Hey everyone, it's your old pal Mike. I wanted to talk about some of my perspective as of recent. I was raised in sort of a Baptist, evangelical, non-denominational type background, and I mean, I kind of came into my faith in a real way when I started reading the Bible for myself. Maybe when I was about 19, I was homeless at the time, running around with a bunch of other homeless punk rock friends of mine and just going crazy. And was homeless in a tent and got a Bible one day. It's kind of a story I could go into at some point, but I don't need to now. But I'm just bringing this up because I've been studying the scriptures for, you know, 20 something years now, pretty in depth. And it's interesting how long, if you're really in a journey with God, if you're really walking in His Spirit and seeking after His ways, there'll be different seasons in your life and moments in your life where He's going to open you up to maybe an error in your understanding regarding His Word or regarding some doctrine, and you have to kind of face those things. And something for me that's been of major benefit, but it has been very eye opening as well, is going back to the first 300 years of Christian writings. And in that process, I feel like in modern times, there's a plethora of voices with just almost a never ending amount of varying interpretations on how we should understand the scriptures, how we should understand the old covenant versus the new covenant, eschatology, a whole bunch of subjects. And there's all these varying opinions. So, something that's really helped me refine my understanding of the true faith is going back to those very first Christians. Because when we go back to their writings and we find consensus, from the churches in Africa and the churches in Europe, the churches in Asia and the Middle East, excuse me, and we see them all saying, essentially the same things on the big primary doctrines. And let's say you're part of a church that has a totally different teaching than what they did on a particular subject. You have to ask yourself, and I had to ask myself, well, who's correct? The very first Christians who got their doctrine handed to them from the apostles and those who are appointed by the apostles? Or, should I trust a doctrine that I believe now, but I can't find in history? So that's led me to a big search on what is the true church? Who is the true church? What denomination or sect or whatever can really truly claim that they're following the apostolic faith that lines up in particular with the ante-Nicene Christian period, which just means the pre-Council of Nicaea. And I'm not knocking the Council of Nicaea. I think there's some very important and pivotal things that came out of Nicaea. But it is important to acknowledge that when the faith joined up with the Roman Empire, things did begin to change doctrinally, very slowly at first, but they did begin to veer. So if we go back to the first 300 years where there was, continual on and off persecution, martyrdom of the believers, and they're protecting these original doctrines from the varying heresies popping up, like Gnosticism, the Marcionites, the Valentinians. Um, these early Christians were the ones holding the faith together, preserving the writings of the apostles, and also the traditions that were handed down. So that, of course, leads you to church history and coming to terms with Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy versus Protestantism. And initially, I began to look and say, Protestantism is clearly the furthest off. Their history's coming from the 1500s, and but then they're going back to like maybe Augustine. So I saw some major red flags there. But then, it becomes Catholicism versus Eastern Orthodoxy. And for me, when I dug deep into that, it seemed very clear to me that Eastern Orthodoxy would be, closer to the original faith, or Oriental Orthodoxy. I know the debate between the natures of Christ, and that's not, this isn't, this video isn't about that, but I'm just saying I've weighed so much on this topic. And what I've come to find, though, is I would say Eastern Orthodoxy on most doctrines to me seems like the most valid, that lines up with the very first Christians. But they bend over backwards to defend their icon veneration, and they refuse to acknowledge that there is truly no written, and we have volumes and volumes of writings from the early church, and they cover an extensive variety of topics, like a lot of topics. And for icon veneration to be completely absent, like their form of it, their practice of it, to be nowhere encouraged, nowhere admonished, and if anything, condemned as basically a pagan practice. And I've heard all the arguments. Like, this isn't about that. I know all the Eastern Orthodox arguments. I know about the catacombs. I know about that Gnostic writing about John. I know all the references they use, but the reality is that it's absent. And they also choose to demonize the fact that throughout church history, there have been debates over icons, and it's not just been a clear-cut thing. There's not always, but almost always been a group within the Eastern Orthodox that oppose icon veneration as it's practiced. I don't think Christian art is condemned, of course, but the idea that we can pray through these icons as a window to heaven and think that it's not idolatry is, I mean, bottom line, it's not supported in the early writings. It's just not there. So that's a glaring red flag that the Protestants don't have. They don't do icon veneration. Um, so I'm finding, but again, the Eastern Orthodoxy, or the Eastern Orthodox Church, when it comes to like how salvation operates, I think they hit the nail on the head, as opposed to this Sola Fide concept. I'm sorry. It's just, again, when you go past Augustine and you go to the earliest Christians, it's just not there. The whole idea of just faith alone. And I understand we can't be saved any other way than by grace through faith. But the Eastern Orthodox way of where it's like synergy in our walk with God, that works out our salvation. It's just more biblical and it's more historical. So this has been a bit of my journey, that I'm weighing these things in real time. So if anyone has comments on these subjects, feel free to put them in the comment section. I'm just going to be sharing thoughts as I go along, what I see in the early church's writings, because I've been reading Irenaeus and Justin Martyr and Ignatius and Hippolytus and Epistle of Barnabas, the Didache, just, everything I can get my hands on, tons of stuff. And I'm trying, because I know there's safety, and that's what I'd like to encourage everybody else, is go back to what the first Christians understood about the word and weigh it against what you might believe about it or what your church might teach about it. And if you find consensus in the early Christians' understanding of a subject, you can know that there's safety in that understanding. They had these things handed to them directly, and they paid for these things with their blood. I mean, they were martyred for their faith, to carry on true doctrine. So we'd be unwise to not hear what they have to say. And, God bless you guys. Just wanted to kind of talk about this a little bit. And if you have some thoughts on where the true church is, how we're supposed to live in this time, because I am in a bit of a limbo state because, you know, can't join the Catholics. And then I agree with some stuff from Protestantism, some stuff from Eastern Orthodoxy. So, I mean, where does that leave me? I wish the Eastern Orthodox would get rid of their icons, but who am I to say that, I'm just a guy. But God bless you guys and keep searching the word, keep trusting him, and he's going to lead you on the right path.